We are the wise and wicked crones. Got no time for lies, no time for casting stones. Wise and wicked, no time for fears or prevarications. Wise and wicked, gonna rise among the nations. Crones are gonna spread our wisdom around the nations. We are the wise and wicked crones. Wise and wicked crones. Hello, hello.
Morning. Is it gloomy and miserable there as it is
It
here?
is, it's the worst thing because it's not raining, which we desperately need at our house. Although, a couple of miles down
It
the
is
road,
raining here.
kilometers
It
down the
is
road,
raining here.
it poured yesterday, like it flooded the streets. But we got nothing
Mm,
and we are
wow.
bone dry. We're watering our trees.
Well, it's raining.
That's how bad it is.
Oh, no, no, no. It is raining here right now.
Oh, you're
So,
lucky. Well, hopefully we'll get some.
but soft
Oh,
rain, just enough to be annoying.
yeah. I'm looking at my window. I'm like, are those raindrops? Maybe, maybe not. Anyway,
Yep.
welcome, welcome,
It's
welcome to
Friday.
our podcast. And
Welcome, welcome.
I can't remember what we're supposed to be doing. I need your memory tea, Leia. Uh,
You're going to introduce yourself. You're going to
hi.
introduce yourself and do the
And
acknowledgement.
the acknowledgement, right?
Hi.
So I'm Peggy Sample, also Margarett in different areas of my life. I am a creator. I am a singer. I am a writer. I am a mom. I am a friend. I am a passionate political aficionado and a very passionate person in terms of being kind to one another. So, and I, before we get started, would like to acknowledge that we are recording on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and many other indigenous peoples, including Inuit and Métis. And we recognize and are grateful to be here. Okay.
Exactly. And I just want to say before I get started here is that we have a bit of an unstable internet going on. So
Mm.
I suspect it's probably something to do with the fact of the weather because I think we're getting thunderstorms or something to that effect. So
Ah,
my name is Leah Nutson. Yeah. My name is Leah Nutson. I'm a warrior, a widow, a political wonk, a rabid knitter, a yoga enthusiast, a grandmother, and now a new grandson, which is really
lucky
cool.
woman.
Yeah, a dog lover and a drinker of fine.
Oh, and now she has frozen. And so I am just going to wait until Leia comes back. And then once Leia comes back, uh, so I'm just going to be editing this today a lot.
So, my name is Leah Nutson. I am a warrior, a widow, a political wonk, a rabid knitter, a yoga enthusiast, also a workout enthusiast, a grandmother, now with a new little grandson,
Yeah.
a dog lover, and a drinker of many kinds of wine, including cheap and cheerful. And yeah, these days we're on a budget. So our mission statement, combined, we've accumulated over a century of learning and life experiences. Our mission is to bring you thought-provoking, interesting, and often humorous wisdom that will enhance your life and enlighten your spirit. Nothing is sacred. This is a frank look at life and an open discussion, an open space for discussion, and we welcome you into our worlds.
We absolutely do. We hope you enjoy our conversations. And if you don't, feel free to move on. And we would welcome you to like and subscribe so that we can build up our audience, share it with your friends. And also, we want to make sure that you know that this is opinion, it is for entertainment and information. And nothing is to be taken as professional advice. If you need professional advice, please seek the appropriate professional.
And if
There.
you'd like, please enjoy join our Facebook group.
Yes,
It
yes,
is
yes.
only it's not an open Facebook group. But certainly if you would like to join, please feel free to put your name forth and We
Send us a
will let you.
request.
Yep,
And
why not?
now we will we always like to draw a tarot card from our Mother Peace tarot deck just to give us a little bit of grounding or insight for what we're doing today. Whoop, that one jumped. Huh, we have Son of Discs today. So, Son of Discs is about goal setting, which is interesting. And it's about the wide range and then narrowing it into the bullseye. So it's about having a direction you want to go in, and sometimes it's like figuring out what you want to do, and you know the general idea, but then you focus in and focus in and focus in. For example, I want to grow a garden. Oh, I want a flower garden. I want a flower garden with something blooming every month. I want perennials, native flowers. Okay, so that's the kind of focusing in. So it is actually about focusing in. And today we are focusing in on our bodies, dominion over them, choice with what
Yes, indeed we
happens. This is something both Leah and I feel very strongly about. So,
are. Yeah, indeed, indeed. I think it's kind of part two of a discussion that we had one or two episodes ago about how we view our bodies and about how society views our bodies. But now we're going to talk about dominion over our bodies. So what does
yep.
that entail? There's different things that we want to talk about. Primarily, the overreaching theme for that is choice, and who has the right to the choice. So under that, we can talk about abortion, IVF, gender reassignment, and all these other things that reproduction rights, basically. And I wonder why, and maybe Peggy, you've got an opinion on this. You can let me shed some light on this for me. I wonder why women's bodies are politicized because it's medical. It's about a medical thing. It's about women's choice and dominion over their bodies. Why is it in some places become a political thing?
Well, that's how
What do
it
you think?
should be, right? But because there are so many men and the patriarchy, and it's like it's a way of controlling us, it's a way of keeping us down. If we need to be covered head to toe, if we need to, be barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen, if we need to be having every baby that gets, planted as a seed in our womb, so to speak, then we don't have you remember how exhausting it was to have small children and to be doing and exhausting on your body and to be pregnant and nursing and going through that and through that. And it's like if we are kept down, then we cannot speak forward. We can't be that force for change and for good that most women are because we do have the children in our bodies and to send our children off to war to allow our children to be massacred because a bunch of old men decide that they want this part of the land for their country or whatever. It's like, oh. So I
Oh,
think that is
agreed.
a huge part of it. It's all about control.
It
It's
is indeed. I think also it's about fear because I think fear and jealousy in a way, and I think it goes back to very, very ancestral times because men were or may have been intimidated or in awe of the fact that women could give birth. Like the fact that, but yeah,
the
and that
women
is an
could bleed and not die.
yeah, and these are all powers that, first of all, probably intrigue. And there were very many matriarchal societies in
Yeah.
times past, but somehow it kind of switched over. The other thing too is I think a lot of men, and again, this is not a male bashing thing. I mean, we have sons between us, we have a bunch. I think it's because a lot of men who have no power in the outside world, the power that they have is over their partner, and they keep that power contained within the home. And it kind of goes back, what was I listening to earlier today? I was listening to a really interesting podcast because they were talking about why all the Trump women and why all the Republican women have a single look, and how come they've done all this plastic surgery and all this kind of stuff. And then it went into their behavior and how these women who are even in positions of power, like somebody like Kristi Noem, has to look like, what is she, Homeland Barbie now? She looks like, with the all the augmentation she has done, and then she behaves like like less intelligent than she really is, to fit into that role. And yet this, so she can't display her ambition for what it really is, and the fact that she actually is a cruel, sadistic, horrible human being. But she,
Sociopaths can be female as well as male, you know?
oh, exactly,
I
exactly.
mean, when you were talking about the matriarchal societies, it used to be that from what we can tell, that when women were on their periods, which they tended to do as a group in a community, right? Because everyone syncs
Yep,
up. We all know how that works, right?
yep,
But
yep.
but that was a time of holiness and being set aside so you could relax and be pampered and take care of yourselves and each other. And then as the patriarchy took over, that turned into the thing of, oh, women must be kept apart because they're unclean when they're on their periods. So that was one thing. And then you're talking about the oppression too. I mean, you know, the phrase rule of thumb comes from Old England, where a man could beat his wife with a rod no bigger than his thumb,
Oh, right. I remember that now. Yeah. Okay, for
right?
sure.
And I
Yeah.
mean, rape was not, there was no such thing as rape within a marriage until very recently, like
Until
in our
very,
lifetime, I'm pretty sure.
yeah. Yeah. And rape, of course, is a control issue. It's not about sex, it's about control.
It's never about, oh, I'm just so horny. I want to go
And,
and rape some
yeah.
90-year-old woman or some
Yeah.
or gang rape or this
Yeah.
is not about it is not about sex. It is about control and cruelty and putting people in their place and also in times of war in the past it was also about impregnating women so that it would be the different line going forward, right? Um, and I think that that part of it seems to have dropped away a bit, but soldiers are still raping.
Yep, they are. They are. And that is, I mean, look what happened in Ukraine. I mean, there was lots
Oh,
and lots of rape that went on, especially in the beginning of Russia and Ukraine. And actually kind of a weird side note was that when they brought in all the North Korean soldiers to help with fighting in Russia against
mercenaries.
Ukraine, mercenaries, they crashed the internet because they were watching so much porn, which they couldn't get in
Oh my
North Korea.
goodness.
So there is something about that which is kind of weird. So okay, so let's talk a little bit about abortion. I mean, it's I mean, nobody, abortion supporters, it's not, nobody wants to support abortion in the sense that, woohoo, this is a really great thing. That's not what it is about. It's about making a medical choice at a particular point in time. And there are reasons for it. There are unwanted pregnancies that happen as the result of rape or forced or incest or something. And it does happen. Ugly as it is, it does happen. Then there is pregnancy that happens at a time that is just not manageable, not manageable whatsoever. And then there is the whole issue, which is I find particularly repugnant in the States. What's going on are these women who are, walking around with dead fetal matter inside them. They are not allowed to get an abortion, and it's killing these women.
Yeah.
The baby is, it's not a baby anymore. It's dead. It's
Or
gone. It's dead.
ectopic pregnancies. They are forcing women to carry. You cannot, an ectopic pregnancy means you're both going to die. That's
Exactly.
what it means.
Yeah, it
And
is. And I know people, my sister had two ectopic pregnancies. I have a friend that almost died from it. Yeah, an ectopic pregnancy is not viable. But all these things are being, and I think Texas is particularly heinous for doing this. So they're basically killing women.
yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
And I mean, you know, that my daughter died before she was born and they had me wait a month I was allowed to wait a month to try to go into labor naturally before I was induced.
Yes.
And that was something that was horrifically hard. Um,
Yes.
I'm getting teary about it today. But it was something that it was safer for me because it was going to be safer for me because they might if it had happened if they tried to do it too soon, then it could have turned into a hysterotomy, I think they called it. Anyways, there was all sorts of horrible things that could happen, but
Yep.
it was a hard thing to do, and oh my God, I mean, if I hadn't had medical intervention, it was I was not going into labor on my own, and so that would
No,
not be allowed in Texas right now, you know. And
that would
and
not be allowed
at a
in
point,
Texas.
what they worry about, and that was why the month is because it begins to become toxic for the mother.
Exactly.
It's like,
Exactly. And that is the whole issue.
yeah, it's like,
Yeah,
and
that is the
then,
whole issue.
yeah,
But
you know what? When we were
so the
younger,
other part of this,
oh, go ahead, go ahead.
no, I was going to say, but the other part of this, actually, I probably should let you finish your thought, but before I forgot, the other part about this is that it, along with these unwanted pregnancies, if you're going to force women to give birth, then you have to provide support for the living child and for the
Yeah.
parent. And then, but they're taking all that away in the States as well. They're
Well, and
not
that's,
giving that support.
yeah,
They're,
they say they're pro-life, and what they
yeah,
are is
exactly.
pro-forced birth. They're not providing living
Pro first,
support for
exactly.
of
Yeah.
any kind, including they charge horrendous amounts for a woman to safely give birth, whether that be
Yeah.
at home with a midwife, trained midwife, or in a hospital setting. And you always want to have access to both. Says the woman who tried to have a planned home birth, but then eventually was transported to the hospital and had a cesarean. You need all of
Mm,
these things supported and covered. And
yeah.
what I was thinking of is, I never thought that I would be fighting for this again, for
No,
our reproductive rights. I mean, it was, back in the 70s and 80s, that was something I would march for. And I did
exactly.
march for. And we used to say, every child a wanted child, every mother a willing mother. And I think that's
Yeah.
that's what it is now. And people will say, "Oh, but all the babies are wanted. We want to adopt them." Well, that doesn't mean that you can force someone else to have because then you're making them be incubators, and we're all into Handmaid's Tale. And then what they did, we were starting to talk about this before we started recording, is forcing the family of the woman who was brain dead, and they kept her body alive as an incubator for the little. I think she was only like 9 weeks pregnant or something at the time when it started. The
I
baby
don't
has
know.
been
Yeah, but it was, yeah.
yesterday delivered um at like just over a pound. So,
Oh,
it's
really?
and and I mean, again, I have mixed feelings about this. I think if a family wants to allow a fetus to get fuller gestation and see if they can save a baby while a mother is being on life support, I think that is it's one thing that might or might not be sustainable. However, having the state come in and say, no, 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 it doesn't matter what you want. We are making this happen. And I think the family has to pay the atrocious medical bills,
Oh, I hope not. I hope
which
not.
imagine in the
So, I
state.
mean, the thing is, though, that, and let's be clear, this woman wasn't in a coma. She was brain dead. So they did pull the plug on her as soon as she gave birth. So, and I have mixed feelings like you in the sense that, yeah, I agree. If a baby, let's say a mom is 6 months pregnant and then keeping them alive, that is to me one issue, let's just say. But I believe in this particular case, this was pure experimentation. They wanted to see if they could make this viable because usually there is problems with the child as well in cases like this. But I think they wanted to see if this was a viable way to produce all these babies. Who wants all these babies? I don't know. It's quite ridiculous because it's expensive to raise children. And yes, I realize there are childless parents out there who do want babies, but there are also a lot of children in foster care who are unwanted. So it's to me, it's like puppies. Everybody wants a purebred poodle or golden retriever, whatever. But there's all kinds of dogs, sitting in humane society waiting to be adopted. Nobody wants those. So then it becomes about selection. What are you selecting?
Yeah.
And that
And
is very, very disturbing as well. And that's like, to me, kind of like it goes into that issue of IVF when they were trying to do, in IVF, they were actually trying to go so far as to gender select.
yeah.
And in that case, for some reason, everybody wants boys. And then but nature has its own way of finding balance between an equal number of boys and girls that happen in any society. As you don't want an over too many boys and not enough girls because then you run into problems. I
Well,
mean,
that's
and
what's happened in China, right?
that's exact. But I think that was more an issue of gender selection done once they knew what the sex of the baby was. I think that was about forced
Oh,
abortions. Yeah,
and children going into orphanages and
exactly.
out of country adoption and infanticide. I mean,
Exactly.
let's say what and that's
Exactly. But I think there's the other issue of IVF. Like my nephew, he was a frozen embryo, and thank God for that. They have a child as a result of that. So that to me is a completely different situation. But in the States, Trump is saying he wants to take control over IVF, and trying to decide in some states who can get IVF and who can't get IVF, and IVF is not right, and all this kind of stuff. And then there's all these stupid horror stories about all these frozen embryos that are just going to be flushed into the ocean because nobody wants them. Like it's the amount of misinformation that goes out there about all these different topics is completely staggering to me. And it just goes to show that people are being seduced into listening to all kinds of nonsense that is actually not true.
but I mean that's a whole problem going on in everywhere. It's going on everywhere is people are being fed misinformation and they will believe it because I mean there's so many psychological studies behind what it is to make people believe mistruths or untruths or lies, whatever like that they're fed because it's done in such a way to make them feel smarter than people who believe, oh, 95% of people believe, of scientists believe that climate change is a real issue and it's a real problem, right? But the real smart people know that those 5% of scientists have the real truth and they're smart enough to know that. Like that is what's happened. That's what's a lot of what's happening to change people from like facts, facts
Exactly.
that you can look at.
Yeah.
Anybody who saw January 6th,
Mm.
that was horrible. That was not something that was in any
But
way.
But I think people are being seduced and to thinking all kinds of nonsense. And for example, I'm part of an international knitting group, so to speak, and we meet about approximately once a month. And there's a couple of Americans on there. I'm usually the only Canadian on there, and most of the people on there are British. And this one gal got on there, and she had no idea about the existential threat that the States is posing to Canada and to the rest of the world. She had no understanding of that. She said she said she was looking for a news channel that was neither left nor right that gave the facts. And I said to her, go to the CBC. She said, well, my parents listen to Fox News, and I'm thinking, Fox News isn't news. It's not new, like, but in her mind, so they've kind of rationalized and given fair play to false information because it's on TV.
Yeah.
And I don't know where this that we live in the time of misinformation, and that is just staggering to me. Absolutely staggering to me. That people, like I was saying to you earlier before we got started, listening to some MAGA supporters at the Donald Trump non-parade. Um, was that a conversation I had with you, or is that talking to my
No,
sister about
no,
that?
your
Okay.
sister.
Okay, my sister. Okay, sorry. I have too many conversations and I can't keep them straight. Anyways, and it was somebody from the Jon Stewart show who was interviewing them and said to them, well, should Donald Trump cancel education? Absolutely. Should he cancel cancer research? Absolutely, because we need to just use natural products now. And should we cancel Alzheimer research? Absolutely. And these are women who are certainly well middle-aged, well-dressed, made up, not what you would consider to me to be an average Trump supporter. Um, and the nonsense that was coming out of their mouths was absolutely ridiculous. And there was another woman that he interviewed, and she was saying, "Yeah, we got to get, Trump's doing an amazing job of getting rid of the waste and all the foolish spending." And he said, "Well, what about this $49 million parade?" And she goes, "Well, that's well worth the money." So the somewhere along the line, they've normalized this kind of insane belief system. So, and then the other part of this thing about the body issue is the transgender community is really under threat in the States.
Oh, the
Horrifically.
LGBTQ two. I'm sorry, I 2S
Yeah.
LGBTQ. It's like that whole community. They've just um, ended the line on the suicide hotline that specialized in helping transgender kids, right, in the States, and it's just like I'm wearing my rainbow earrings. It's June when we're recording this, so I am totally a Pride supporter. But it's like people fear what they don't know, and they think they don't know gay people. They think they don't know transgender people. They're wrong. Almost always they're wrong. Um, and so depending on where you are, they are people are so terrified of being outed and killed, right? And this whole fear. I mean, oh my God, drag queens reading to children in libraries. What are they going to do? Beat them to death with To Kill a Mockingbird? No, this is not the problem. It's the MAGA supporters with their guns. Sorry. Uh, you see, and
Right.
that's what because there's been more murders by MAGA supporters, white guys with guns, and then of course they try and flip it and say, oh no, no, it's a Democrat who's doing that. Well, no. I don't want to put it in terms of two political parties, because it's not just two political parties, right? It is a way of looking at the world that has become narrowed and narrowed and narrowed by a certain group of people who, at this point in Canada and in the States, both tend to follow similar political parties. And you see, I think that somebody who's been, for example, a lifelong Republican, I think that, okay, fine, you voted for Trump because you hated Biden and what the Democrats, what you saw they were doing to your economy, whatever. Okay, that's one viewpoint. But now you see what Trump is doing to the country, and if you're still supporting him, to me, that means that you are as bigoted, as racist, as misogynistic as he is. And it may not be because you are not intelligent, it may be because you have been so brainwashed
You
as
drank the
to
Kool-Aid. You
believe.
drank the Kool-Aid.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, precisely. And I think the other thing too is that you were fed misinformation because when Biden ended his term, the economy in the States was on a high. It was escalating. Things were going really well, and Trump is crashing it. And
But
that's
they
all
don't
there is.
believe that. That's the
Well,
problem.
but they're, Bob used to say you're entitled to your own opinion, but you're not entitled to your own set of facts. And the
Yeah.
facts do not support what their belief is. And that's all there is to it. There's a difference between opinion and fact.
And
Um, And in terms of transgender and
Yeah.
LBD, I can't do LBDTQ because I can't even remember my pin. Um, the point is that there you okay, a couple of things. First of all, there are all different kinds of people in the world, whether you like it or not.
Yep.
Okay? They have the right to be love whom they want. If they don't feel comfortable in their body in terms of gender, they're allowed to seek change. They're allowed to do that. I have a daughter who's severely disabled. She is allowed to live in this world, even though she's not perfect. All these things happen whether you like it or not. But and Bob used to say the funny thing too about reality was it was like a dirty diaper. Once you open it, you can't close it back up because you know what's in there. So you can try and take the world and you can force us to get rid of DEI. You can force us to do this, force us back into this narrow thing. But we already know because we are already opened. For the most part, a lot of us, our minds are already open, and you can't force that upon us into believing that because we don't believe it. And it's like religion. And I used to say about religion, or I do say about religion, is that religion has to come from the inside out. You can't force it in. So you cannot force me to now believe that all these things are wrong, that everybody should be man or woman and completely normal and blah, 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 and all this kind of absolute nonsense because it's not real. And as much influence as this, I think we may have dodged a bullet in Canada. I don't know. Maybe I'm overly confident. We Canadians really resist being um, except for some places in Canada, really resist being forced into believing things that they know are not true. You know what I mean? For the most part, there are pride parades. We are not changing the language. We embrace multiculturalism. We allow people to speak other languages. We let people love who they want, at least for now. And I'm hoping that we have dodged that bullet in terms of trying to force us to follow the states in what they're doing in terms
I
of
wish I could be as confident as you feel because I know people who do not hold those beliefs and that are being swayed by misinformation that they believe is true. And and it's so frustrating. It's so frustrating. And I mean the thing too about, there's only two sexes, says Donald Trump. Right? And it's like there's a beautiful piece that I've read, and it goes on about how it's like it's not X or XY. There are so many permutations. I don't know, it's 114 or 140, like different scientific, because of the parts within the X and the Y, and it can be like all this other. It's really fascinating science. It's really difficult to read and parse through, which is, of course, why a lot of people go, yeah, no, A or B. No, A to
okay,
Z.
so you just made me think of something. Sorry, I'm a little bit itchy here. You just made me think of something. Part of the problem with what we will call the right is that they rule by anger and intimidation, and they're mad about everything. Okay. And people on the other side of that, we want love. We want love, we want acceptance, we want kindness, we want good feelings. So you've got this, stern rigidity, this anger, this bitter religious righteousness, on one hand, and whether any right wing extreme religions would fall into that category, not necessarily just Christians. And then you got, on the other hand, people who want love and acceptance and kindness and want the world to move forward. That's on the other hand here. So the divide is between those two forces in our world now. Those that want to control with anger and fear and intimidation, and those who want a fair and just and kind world. So that is basically what it boils down to.
And I agree completely. And that is wrapping it right around. That is why they want to control our bodies so that they can control us, because I would say traditionally, women are the ones who will will try to come to the consensus, will try to operate in a cooperative manner, will try to help each other out because we're all part of that, if not mothers, but we have and and I'm not saying only women have a nurturing nature. However, in the society that has existed for the past number of years, many, like I don't know how many hundred years, the men have not been always allowed to express or develop that part of themselves, and and women have sometimes had to suppress it. But I mean, that's kind of what it is, right? Like I was reading a book recently about um, people who were being refugees in World War II, right, in France on the road, and how they would share what little tiny food they had with the families to help the children. And that was not being organized. The men were all off soldiering, or except for the really old, right, or the really young. And so they were it was this is how in in general, I mean, yes, we all want our children to survive, right? But we also want other people's children to survive. And I think that and and that's the survival of living children who parents want and who can who we can help to work together on this one. There's no way we can be putting women in chains and saying, produce a baby for us. And I
Exactly.
fear that's what, you know.
Well, the other thing too, and I know we're getting ready to wrap this up. The other thing too is that you consider this: if you get rid of immigration in the States, who's going to pick your strawberries? Who's going to pick your fruit? Who's going to pick your lettuce? So, what you can do then is you can convince the poorly educated, whom Trump loves, that having these big, huge families is the way to go. And now you're back to this kind of serfdom, this kind of large farm family that has to help to support the family. All 10 kids are out there picking lettuce because you no longer have the immigrant population in there helping out. And that is a way of also then the oligarchy becoming more powerful and the lower classes becoming weaker. And then you're recreating the serfdom, or in Donald Trump's words, the golden age of America, when there was this huge disparity between the very wealthy and the very poor. So there is, that's the cynic in me coming out. I do think I think there is a sinister master plan going on here, and it's revealing itself.
Well, it's called
But
Project 2025, right?
exactly. But what gives me, and again, what gives me hope and is watching my own son, who was a great big football player in high school, and a great big guy, nurturing his little daughters. And like, he took because Sydney is going into a new daycare system next month. He took this week off, and he's with Sydney all week. It's the two of them. And he does the changing of the diapers, the dressing of and this is this great big huge guy with this tiny little girl. And and I know he's not raising his daughters in a patriarchal way.
Yeah.
He's raising them in a hands-on way. And that gives me hope that this generation that came after mine and yours is more is it better positioned to be transitory in terms of supporting women and in terms of supporting other peoples.
And I believe that is happening in a lot of places and situations, and has, I would say, for a long, long time, right? I mean, my first husband, the dad of my two boys, I mean, he was completely involved. He was so involved. He did everything. But the other thing is, if men are being taught to believe that they need to be the protectors and they are the owners of these women, I mean, you're going to go back to, incest. Incest is a huge thing, and it is again a power thing. It's not a sex thing. It's a power thing. And that is something that by suppressing women and by protecting them and oh no, you don't need to go to school. You can
Yeah.
stay home. Like all of that bull.
property. And it's interesting because I was listening this morning, and I guess it was a conversation I didn't have with you, but with my sister. One of the reasons that Trump hates Gavin Newsom and hates Trudeau, Justin Trudeau, so much is because they're both tall, good-looking, slim men, and Melania put on the big happy face for these guys.
Yeah.
And Trump views Melania as property. And his issue with them isn't anything other than my wife, my woman, my property, and she's making googly eyes at you, and I don't like that. And that's really, really interesting and really primitive and speaks to the fact that they have a completely unsuitable person in the way in the way
Uh,
so beyond unsuitable that we are no longer even being able to parse out and recognize the different elements of him that make him so nuts, and they're normalizing his nuttiness, and that kind of is having a trickle down into society, which is again causing really is the source of the conversation that we're having today, and
yeah.
why we're having this in this day and age. 2025 is just beyond me.
We marched when we were teenagers and in our early 20s. I lived across the street from the Morgentaler Clinic um, in the 80s, in the early 80s in Toronto, when I would watch people protest until they had to take their own daughter in, and that happened more than once because I had friends who were escorts and they knew. It was like it had nothing to do with uh, support. It's not support. And I understand, I do understand that some people truly, truly believe that life begins at conception or before that, because now, you're not allowed in some places to use Plan B, which prevents implantation, which is conception, right? Anyway, no, no, no. It's like I understand that some people can do that. But on the other hand, if you think about it, for so many millennia, there was no perceived life until quickening, which was when you could feel the movement of the baby, I will say, at 12 weeks around, we'd start to feel
16
quickening.
weeks, 16
Yeah,
weeks is,
in
yeah,
there. Okay.
yeah,
And up until then, if a woman's period was late, oh, my period is late. I better bring that on. Oh, let me drink my tea. Let me scrub my floors.
yeah,
Like it was bringing on a late period,
yeah, exactly.
and women were in control of that.
Yeah, times have changed. Well, we're not going to solve the problems of the of the world in a half an hour, but we at least can discuss it and open our minds to what's going on somewhat. It's a way of coping. Anyways, it's a way of coping and trying to make sense of things that are absolutely ridiculous and out of
Yeah.
control. But I
And
think we can end it there. Yeah.
yep, yep, yep. Let's because you know what? It's one of those topics that why it's like they're not forcing men to have vasectomies. They're not forcing men to not masturbate and lose that precious semen, right? Like, okay, I gotta stop now because it's obviously something I'm really strongly passionate about. And I remember I have to say this one more thing. I remember when a friend of mine discovered she was pregnant, and it was at the most horrific point in her life that it could possibly happen. And she wanted children, but it was totally not manageable. And at the time she had to go to the States. She had to go to the States. And we were talking and I was helping her make her plan for her trip. And she said, "You don't think I should do this, do you?" And I said, "It has nothing to do with what I think. It's your choice, and I'm your friend and I support you. And I think that's how it has to be with women's
Exactly.
bodies and
Exactly.
women's choices."
Yeah.
So,
It's it's their choice, their body, their choice, and that's all there is to it.
and if you're in the wrong body,
Okay,
you
on
should
that
be able
note,
to do
we're
that
gonna,
too.
yep.
So, okay, I'll stop now.
Oh, pick your body. Absolutely. You get to be who you want, whom you want to be in this world, and that's all there is to it. You get to love whom you want to love, and as long as you're not causing hurt, you're not causing pain. As long as you're falling into those categories, it's your choice. It is your
And
choice to be
and you're um you're with people of your own age. You know
exactly.
that
I mean,
you're adult.
there are certain guidelines that we cannot cross, but those are different.
That's a
Those are different
whole different topic, and we're not going to
topic
do it.
entirely. Okay.
Oh,
All
thank you,
righty.
Leah.
Thank you.
Everybody,
Have
like
yourself
and
a good one.
subscribe.
Yep. Follow us on Facebook too.
Ciao for now.
Bye, Joe.
Bye.
Bye.